Because I'm a stud. I'm ballsy. I don't take no shit from anyone. Because I'm a stud. I smoke my stogie anywhere I want. I don't take no shit from anyone. I'm ballsy. I smoke my stogie anywhere I want. I don't have to find a hideout place like you.
Hey guys, and welcome back. I just wanted to state that I'm feeling a little under the weather. I had originally intended to record the audio for this video on Wednesday, but lo and behold, that was the same day that I got sick. So if I don't quite sound like my usual self, that's why. But that's enough of me griping and moaning. Let's talk about today's run. Like the video name implies, I smoked all the way through Into the Radius in attempt to beat the game. Basically, the goal is that I wasn't allowed to do anything unless I had a cigarette in my mouth. I wasn't able to walk, wasn't able to reload mags, wasn't able to do anything unless I had a cigarette. And, as you can imagine, this turned out to be rather difficult. It turns out that the average cigarette lasts about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Meaning that whatever I wanted to do had to be completed within that time frame before I had to find some safety and light another one. Now trust me, no one more than me would like to be able to tell you that I did this run legitimately. Or at least in the way that I originally intended. You see, in the original concept, I wasn't allowed to do anything unless I had a cigarette in my mouth, and that included movement. And I immediately knew that this run was going to be either incredibly difficult or pert near impossible from the very beginning, because within the first 10 minutes, I had already failed once. And by the time that I had gotten to Bolotki Village, I knew I was in over my head. If it weren't for the gunfights in the game, this run would actually be incredibly easy. But it's just like the old saying goes, no good challenge run survives contact with the enemy. I tried my damnedest to do this legitimately. I restarted multiple times when realizing halfway through a firefight, I didn't have a cigarette and had already reloaded mags and or killed enemies. So it wasn't like I could slough it off like, I just cheated a couple of steps. And it was about my 5th or 6th reset that I decided to change it up a little bit. You see, the problem is there's no auditory warning when your cigarette runs out. And if I was ever to reattempt this run again, I would probably find some sort of timer that went off about every minute and 25 seconds so that way I could pop in a fresh smoke. But without anything to be constantly reminding me, it's too easy to lose yourself in the middle of a gunfight and just fail to run. And maybe there's more conscientious players out there that probably could pull it off, but I'm certainly not one of them. But because I was already halfway through the game, and I really liked the concept of the run, I decided to stick with it. Deciding that I would calculate the percentage of the game that I smoked versus running the entire game in its entirety. So this means while I don't have to reset all the time, I still need to be smoking as much as humanly possible in order to get a good score. And how I would calculate this percentage is based on how many cigarettes I smoked versus how long it took me to beat the game. Now if I had done the run originally how I intended, I would have been able to just divide the amount of time played by 1 minute and 30 and gotten my total amount of cigarettes. But because I swapped my rule set kind of midway through, I had to count each and every cigarette individually, which led to me watching about 6 hours of footage counting individual cigarettes that I had smoked. Now this is very important because the way time works in Into the Radius is a little wonky. So say you were to load a save at the 10-minute mark. Now Into the Radius auto-saves about every 5 minutes. meaning that if you didn't manually save, the next save point would be at the 15-minute mark. But here's the thing, let's say you die at the 13-minute mark. You'll have to reload at the 10-minute mark, but the 3 minutes that you had spent inside the game do not count towards your total playtime. And if you happen to smoke 2 cigarettes during that 3 minutes and then die, and then reload the 10-minute save, do it again, smoke another 2 cigarettes, but this time don't die and get the next save at the 15-minute mark, technically speaking, you smoked 6 minutes worth of cigarettes in 5 minutes. This may look like I'm recounting the same cigarettes that technically should have been used anyways, but I'm counting the total amount of time that I had to spend shoving nicotine sticks into my face. I did not count the ones that I would spawn in with after death if I already had a cigarette in my mouth, but every time I had to make the motion of grabbing a fresh cigarette and lighting it, I counted that. Now I did not abuse this to try dying over and over again to give myself a better percentage, but I do want to state that I did die a lot. I don't know what has happened recently, but those armored SWAT mimics aren't playing around. I also made a terrible decision when going to the Pobeda factory. Me, in all of my infinite wisdom, decided that I would bring a Mosin. Now for some, this might be a fine weapon of choice, but in my hands, I might as well have walked up to them and started hitting them with it. In fact, the situation I was in was so bad that I had to end up selling the Mosin, leaving me nearly broke, buying a box of armor-piercing 7.62x25, and raiding the TT-33 stash outside of the train station. This is a very important lesson that always use guns you're comfortable with. After that though, I did end up finding a rusty old AK and used that for the rest of the run. The only other notable location where I died at was at the children's playground. And like I said before, these armored SWAT mimics aren't playing around. Other than these 2 locations and one time at the castle, I had basically no deaths. So in the end, exactly how much of a percentage did I smoke through Into the Radius? Now I should note that it took me about 5 hours and 20 minutes to beat the game, but we will be subtracting a little bit of time off, because technically I didn't start my first cigarette until about 4 minutes into the game, and I was not smoking while I was in the firing range. Technically, I could have bought cigarettes inside the terminal there, but I just decided that because I wasn't really doing anything relevant to the game besides testing out gun builds, I considered this to be a neutral zone, so I just subtracted the time in there. In total, it actually only took me about 5 hours to beat the game if I wasn't goofing around. So now the moment we've been waiting for, what percentage of the time spent in the game did I actually spend smoking? Well, if you take the 237 cigarettes that I had smoked, times this by 1.3, this would give you about 308 minutes. And if we take the 5 hours at 60 minutes apiece, that would give us 300 minutes. Meaning, technically speaking, I smoked 102.67% of the time, putting me on par with your average European. So technically, did I beat the game smoking 100% of the time? Kinda sorta. I definitely would have preferred it to do it the original way I intended. I think if I was ever to attempt this run again, I think I would change it so I would be allowed to move into cover, but not to randomly roam around the game, and also to get a timer. Another interesting fact about cigarettes that I just didn't really know where to put in is actually about their use. So technically, for every cigarette you smoke, you regain 10% of your hunger bar. Meaning during the entire time while playing, I was never hungry, and was essentially able to run everywhere in the game, never having to worry about my hunger bar. And at the low cost of $50 per pack, and with 20 cigarettes a pack, this means you can go from 0 to 100 on your food bar twice, making cigarettes the most efficient food in Into the Radius. So the next time you see your average blue-collar worker walk out of a gas station with nothing more than 2 packs of cigarettes and 3 Red Bulls, he might be onto something. Overall, this was a pretty fun run. Still kind of upset that I didn't get to do it the way I intended, but still glad I did it anyways. But hey guys, that's all I got for now, and I'll see you later.